Hi, it's Dan with EUJUICERS.COM, coming to you as always from the heart of Europe. And in this video, what I want to do is compare standard mouth juicers with wide mouth juicers. And actually what I'm going to do is look at some of the newest versions of wider mouth juicers, these new feeding tubes that are just coming onto the market. And what I'm going to do in this video, I'll talk a little bit about my experiences with these types of juicers and kind of the background of them. Then I'm going to bring out 4 juicers, one kind of old favorite and 3 brand new ones. I'm going to juice the same recipe in each of those. And at the end, I'll bring out the 4 feeding tubes and give you my feedback on how it went with each type of ingredient. Now, the ingredients I'm going to be using are right here. I'll do the same recipe in each juicer. This won't be an in-depth test, like an in-depth review. We plan to film some later on some of these juicers individually. But I will run a timer. It won't be perfect. I'll probably talk during some of it, but it'll give an overall idea of the speed difference between these juicers as well. But again, my focus is going to be how easy is it to use these feeding tubes, these new designs and these classic designs. The recipe I'm going to be doing today is it's designed so I have all sorts of different ingredients to see how they go with these feeding tubes. I've got a ½ kilo of carrots. I've got 125 grams of blackberries, 125 grams of spinach, which is usually the trickiest thing to get into a juicer. I've got 1 Granny Smith apple back here, and then I've got some kale leaves, just a bunch of kale leaves that I just picked in the garden this morning to see how longer leafy greens will do versus the spinach. Now, for the longest time, juicers were regulated, they still are regulated by the government, and given a maximum size. For example, this guy here, this is from a Sauna 808. In the US, this would be a Omega VSJ 843. And this, dictated by law, was the biggest feeding tube size you could have. The reason being to prevent little hands from reaching in and getting caught in the auger. Yet somehow, in 2013, Kuvings kind of shocked the juicer world with this model. And everyone said, well, how can they do that? That's much bigger. What they did, they followed the spirit of the law by saying, yeah, we're going to make a juicing head that people can't reach into. And what they've done, there's a little blade in here that kind of bisects the tube. So what that means is you can get your hand so far, but then you couldn't get it around that blade. Now, on the other side of that, that also means you can't just throw an apple in there. It's not going to fall right in. You're going to have to push it through with a pusher, and it's going to get cut with that blade inside, which kind of balances out one of the advantages of gravity feeding that you have here. Now, I use both kind of juicers. We do a lot of juicing here. We're always testing juicers, plus I'll make it for lunch sometimes. And the one I choose kind of depends on what I'm juicing. I use both of these types of juicers all the time. I also use a horizontal, which I have at home, a Sauna 707. But generally speaking, if I've got spinach, which I usually do, I tend to gravitate towards the wider mouth juicers because spinach in a narrow mouth is always a bit of a problem. Unless you want to feed leaves individually or just a couple at a time, it's kind of a hassle. I'll grab a bunch, squeeze it together and try to shove it in. Whereas here, it's a lot easier. You get less spinach leaves falling into the juice. And both of these types have their pluses and minuses. Some customers will automatically think, oh, that's got to be better. Man, I can throw all this stuff inside. It'll be so much faster. And they are faster, that's for sure, because they have a bigger motor that runs faster, about 50% faster than this. And they've got this massive auger here. These kind of juicers kind of use brute force just to shove the produce through. But they'll still jam. You put a fat carrot in here without cutting it up, it's going to jam, and the auger's going to get stuck. You'll have to reverse it. Whereas that's not so much a problem with these guys because you can't get real big chunks in there. If I get a fat carrot, I'll have to slice it. But most carrots will fit in there. And the other thing is, these are, like I said, these are definitely faster. The standard juice recipe I do tends to take about 3 minutes here, about 5 minutes here. But on the flip side, I can clean this guy usually in about 2 minutes. These guys take me 3 or 4 because there's a lot more nooks and crannies and things in there to clean. Another difference is the juice itself. Generally, you will see what looks like a higher yield come out of this. But what I found is that's a higher yield before straining. These big augers shove things through, but they tend to leave a lot more pulp. this massive guy, it doesn't have any cutting blades. It just shoves things down, crushes it. Whereas something like this has a dual-winged auger. There's 2 blades here. So for example, a carrot comes in, it's going to get sliced off, it's going to get sliced off, and what goes down here are little tiny pieces, not the big chunks. So generally speaking, you get a finer juice, less pulpy. If you strain it, there's almost no pulp out of here. And I tend to notice a bit of difference, a bit sweeter, but maybe that's just me. So that's kind of my experience with them. What I want to do now is bring out these 4 juicers, our 4 contenders, and we'll take a look at them, and then we'll do some juicing. So stick around. So contestant number 1, this is the Omega MMV. Now I'll put a link down below. I've got a few videos on this. It's a juicer I quite like, actually. Also wanted to mention to you, I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. We offer all of these in our store, so I have no reason to push one over the other. It's really just to see what the difference is like. Now this guy is heavily based on the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer Elite, which came out in 2014, 2015. The reason I picked the MMV is because in Europe, this is what the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer Elite looks like. It doesn't have this tray. That's an optional part, which I feel is absolutely necessary to have. Because, especially you'll see with things like spinach, otherwise things get everywhere. Now this is what I would call your standard premium high quality wide mouth juicer. Again, this comes out of the same factory as the Kuvings Whole Slow Juicer Elite. 240 watts, runs at 60 RPM, which is kind of standard. Some of the slower ones will run about 43. And like I said, I've used this extensively. I like it. It's kind of a standard we'll judge things against. It does take a little more time to clean. So that's our first contender. This is brand new. This is the 3rd generation Kuvings, the company that invented the wide mouth juicer, and this is called the Evolution. Now, that's a good name for it. It's not a revolution. They didn't reinvent a lot, but they changed things. They evolved it forward. What they've done, they've taken the feeding tube from their commercial model, the Kuvings Chef, which costs about 1,500 euros, and they've put it on a home model. They say they've made the feeding tube wider. This is wider here. Now, will it still take a standard apple? Yeah. Hey, check that out. How about this guy? Yeah. So you see some apples it'll take, some won't. But it is 4 millimeters wider than that. You've got this trap door here, and you've got this cutout inside where you could feed things like carrots in directly. Otherwise, it's really similar to the previous model, the 2nd gen. They've kind of bumped up the design. I like the way it looks. They've got a textured finish on it. But the auger, the motor, pretty similar. The juicing chamber is a little bit different. It's reinforced a bit, a little stronger. So that's our 2nd wide mouth juicer. Now representing the narrow mouth or the standard mouth juicer, this is something that just came into us this month. This is brand new. This is the Sauna 828 vertical juicer. And what Sauna has done here, they have the standard feeding tube, but they've got this little side tube. You know, when I first saw this, I thought, "Ow, what's that good for?" It looks like a marketing gimmick. In the pictures I saw, like tomatoes being rolled in and stuff, which I could probably put in there. But I have played around with this juicer quite a bit, and this opening here is quite a bit wider, and I found it's pretty useful for things like greens. Like if you get a bigger kale leaf, yeah, I could shove this in. This one's not so big, but they go in a lot easier here, and then you push down with the pusher, and I found that to be really effective for spinach. So we'll see how that goes. So it's Sauna's new generation vertical juicer. Power-wise, we're looking at 150 watts versus 240 in these big guys. Again, this thing's really easy to clean. It has the pulp control lever on the front, which helps with cleaning. Right towards the end of juicing, you'll notice I'll slide it open. It's going to push out a lot of the pulp, so when I'm actually cleaning it, there's much less pulp stuck in there. And last but not least is a model from Hurom, and this one is really something completely different. I've never used this. I'm really anxious to try it. I was just reading about it. We just got this in. And this is the, what do they call it, like a self juicer? It's the HA-I is the name of the model. And what it's got 2 feeding tubes. It's got standard feeding tubes, similar to the sauna. It's got this kind of bowl here where you could throw things in. But it's also got this thing, which is something like a food processor. If I open that up, there's a blade inside that spins. Now the thought behind this is that you're going to cut your produce into pretty small pieces. In the book it recommends, the instruction book, it recommends 3-centimeter pieces. So this is going to take the most prep. But the idea is that you could prep beforehand, fill up this bowl, start it, and then walk away. And that little blade in there is going to be chopping them even smaller and sending them into the juicing chamber. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so I'm going to start my first recipe. I've got my timer here. What I'm going to do is time it, not just the juicing time, but prep time. Most of these guys won't take much prep. This guy will. And then once I actually shut off the motor, that's when I'm going to stop this. And then later, I will add the time it took to clean, and we'll put a table up at the end of the video. So I'm going to start with this. I'll start my timer. And what I recommend is saving some of these carrots for the end to clean things out. Notice this apple isn't going to fit, so I will need to cut that. That's part of my prep time. I'm going to cut it into 4 pieces. Just takes a few seconds. That's a little loud. Hope you can still hear me. Putting in this kale now. This stuff's going in fine. Sometimes greens get a little stuck. No, it's being pulled through. That looks good. Now with a juicer like this, you need to let the carrots be cut up. Notice it just got stuck. So I just reverse it, go forward again. I probably should have broken that carrot. Big fat carrots, you definitely want to cut them up in a juicer like this. You don't want to feed things in any juicer as fast as you can. Let it do each carrot or each handful of apple or spinach or whatever at a time. It's also good to rotate your ingredients. Again, spinach is the trickiest because these leaves go everywhere. But with this tray here, that makes it a lot easier. Now they kind of get hung up in the tube, so that'll have to be pushed through. This thing's got an interesting pusher. You know, you have to line it up like I mentioned, but it's also got a spiral track, which gives you a little more torque. As you push down, it twists and gives it that extra little push. So I'll just get all of the spinach done right now. It's not much spinach, 125 grams. And just shove it all through there. We'll look at the end to see if any spinach got stuck. Put in some carrots. That'll kind of clean things out a bit. Now, berries aren't something I normally juice, maybe just a few to add a flavor to something. But it's berry season, so why not? Especially to see how these different tubes handle it. No problem with something like this. Got a few carrots to go. These are small carrots. I looked for the big ones. They didn't have any in the shops today, so those big fat ones, but they're decent size like this guy. Something like this might jam the juicer. It's the last one, let's see. Nope. Handled it, no problem. So as soon as I turn this off, I'm going to let it run a couple more rotations. Get the last of that. You see the berry juice still coming out. I'm at almost 4 minutes, 3:48. Yeah, let's stop it there. So 3:54 is my time there. And observations, everything went fine. You saw it jammed once. Oftentimes with carrots or beets, any vertical is going to jam a lot depending on the diameter of those pieces. So that's that guy. And you know what? Let's take a look inside. I'm going to clean this later. It's a little hard to open. That means there's some pulp impacted in there. And it's pretty clean. There's not much stuff in there. There's quite a bit down there in the auger. But again, I'll see how long it takes to clean at the end. So that's the Omega MMV. So next up is the Kuvings, the next generation, the evolution of this guy, the Kuvings Evolution. And I'm curious to see how this is going to go with the trap door and everything. This one will take a little more prep, and pay attention to how things go there. I'm especially curious about the spinach. This opening here is too small. I don't want to shove the spinach through there. So I think I'm going to be pushing some here. Hopefully not too much will fall over the edge. So I will start my time. We saw earlier, if I put this in right, that's going to fit. Yep. Again, these carrots are small enough, they're fitting in here no problem. It should perform very similarly to the Omega MMV. Now this kale, maybe I want to try that. Yeah. The smaller leaves fit in just fine. Yep, that was a pretty big carrot. I was thinking it might jam it. There's a temptation with these wide mouths to just shove everything in there, but you gotta take it slow and easy. The berries are fine. Wonder how it would go there. Yeah, check that out. It just sort of self-feeds them in. And now the spinach. Yeah, there's no way I'm putting it in that little hole. Yep, my first leaf in the juice. Yeah, it's going fine. You just got to kind of push on that trap door. I wouldn't mind having a tray around there to keep these leaves from falling over. Let's put a carrot in to move things along. You'll notice I haven't had to use the pusher at all. Although generally with verticals, you rarely should have to use a pusher unless things got jammed in the feeding tube, or with things like spinach in a standard vertical juicer. Sometimes they get stuck in there. Yep, one more jam. Just let it run a few more seconds, get the last bits of juice till it starts going to a drip instead of a steady stream. Yeah, there we go. 403. So really similar. What was I, 354 over there within 9 seconds. Yeah, I'm still getting a tiny bit here, but I consider that done. Overall observations with this guy. Honestly, I think I prefer this kind of feeding tube to this. This trapdoor, yeah, it did take a whole apple, whereas this one didn't. Again, this is 4 millimeters wider. It's going to depend on the apple. But I don't know. I like the idea of just being able to shove things in. Yeah, there's the little blade in there, but for me, the trapdoors just, I don't know, especially with the greens. Instead of just throwing them in, they're falling directly in. You have to put in a little bit, let the trapdoor open, wait for it to come back up. But again, it was pretty good. And let me look in there, see how much is jammed in there. About the same. More in here. I see some pieces of carrot still in there, like that. But again, we'll see when I go to clean how long it takes. So that's the Kuvings Evolution. Up next is Sauna's newest juicer. Like I said, this just came in this month. It's brand new. And this will definitely take a lot more prep time. You notice I'm recording. Once I start, I include the prep time. The only prep I've done beforehand is washed all the produce, cut the tops off the carrots, off all of them. So I'm starting with the same stuff. But definitely this one will require some prep time. I'll have to cut up the apple and see how I can get that spinach in there. So I'll start it up. One thing notice about this, I know Sauna came out with a new motor in this one. It's super quiet compared to these big guys. But we'll see how much it jams with carrots. So I'm going. Start with some carrots. Now I've got a big carrot here. This is the biggest carrot I've seen. I also want to check this pulp container. This pulp lever should be on closed. Right at the end, I will open it. But I'm gonna cut this carrot because it's pretty big. It'll fit in there, but I have a feeling it might jam. And normally I cut on the diagonal like that. Let's see how that goes. I'll push it in. Now this one uses a different auger system than either of those. These just have one big auger that starts small and comes down bigger. This guy has a twin-bladed auger. Basically what it's doing, it's got two blades on the top that are cutting little pieces of carrot off, sending those little pieces into the juicing chamber. Maybe a bit like what the Hurom's doing. So far so good. Let's see how the kale goes. Yeah, I can fit it in there. Again, with the smaller feeding tube, it's kind of hanging in there, so I want to push it down. I'm going to try from the side as well. Yeah, that worked fine. Yeah, I kind of like that side feeding for something like this. The apple, of course, I'll have to cut. I can save time with something like this. And then these little pieces will fit right in. I could also cut them bigger, slide them in from the side and let them fall. Put in a carrot to kind of clean things out a bit. And then it's spinach time. Got my first jam. Reverse it for a moment. And I'm definitely going to feed the spinach from the side, not the top. So I feed it from the side and then just push it down. Not as easy as the MMV, but I think I liked it a little better than the Evolution. I like this a little better than the Evolution. I don't have to wait for that trap door to slide back. And this tray means the leaves aren't going everywhere. Got 2 more carrots to go, big fat one, so I'm going to cut that. I'm also going to open up this pulp lever. It's just going to make it a little easier to clean at the end. You'll notice more pulp is coming out right now. By setting it to half open, I won't get quite the yield, a little less pressure, but the pulp will just come flying out. Can't see the juice coming out, so I'm not sure when to stop it. Okay, I can see from here. And yeah. 4:59. So about a minute longer. Kind of surprised me. Normally, I've tested sometimes just carrots, and I've been able to do like a kilo of carrots, about 5 minutes here, about 3 minutes here. But right now it's, for a recipe, about a minute longer. Let's see if I can gain some of that time back when I clean it. So that's that one. I just realized, my cameraman pointed out to me, I forgot to show you the inside here. Should be a lot cleaner. Let's see. Yeah, I mean there's nothing for places to get stuck. And actually in here looks a lot cleaner too. That's to be expected with this type of auger and this slower 43 RPM. So last but not least, the Hurom HA-I. I could use the standard feeding tube, but I'm really curious to see how this works. I think it's going to take 2 fillings of this bowl. There's a mark on here, a max line, and then a max line for juicy ingredients. I don't have any of the juicy ingredients. They list citrus, grapes, tomatoes, melons. So I can go to the max, but I'll just do it here. I still think it'll take at least 2 times to feed it. I'm a little confused. There's holes there. I guess you don't feed it on the counter. I guess it's got to be attached. And then I'm going to put the stuff here. So I'm going to start the time, like I said, with the prep, which makes me think this one will take a while longer. And maybe you save that once it's full. You can walk away, do other stuff, so you don't have to keep feeding it constantly. So I'll start my time, and I guess I'll just start mixing some ingredients in there. Put some of these guys, and put some carrots. Hey, guess what? I just noticed something. I was looking at this juice saying, yeah, that yield doesn't look right. Guess what I forgot to put in? Whoops. I forgot to put my berries in there, so I'll juice those and I'll add that time to it. So it's going to put it over 5 minutes for sure. Okay, I'm really curious about this. Again, the manual says cut things into 3-centimeter pieces, at least things like apples and carrots. The berries I'm sure I can throw in whole, but I'll cut the kale into smaller bits. Handful of berries. I could see where this would be handy if, let's say you want fresh juice in the morning, you got energy at night, so at night you prep everything, you fill the bowl. I wouldn't do that with the apples, they're going to oxidize and turn brown. So I guess that means I'm going to be cutting the apples into pretty small bits. what did I say? Did I say 3 millimeter? If I did, I meant 3 centimeter. Because I'm not a surgeon. See if I can fit one more carrot in there and start this baby up. So there it goes. You know, I could be saving time by prepping these while that's running, I just realized. It looks like it's just about done with the first round. And now let me fill it for round 2. Yeah, still managed to spill some of this spinach. See if I can do it in 2 bowlfuls. It's going to be close. Now, you know what? I'm going to let it run just a bit. Get that volume down a little lower, then I'll put in the rest. I think the volume's low enough I can top it off with the rest of it, which are mostly heavy things anyway, which looks like that helps pushing it down. And once it starts dripping, I'll stop my timer. Yep, some pulp's trying to get in there. Okay, I'd say that's enough. 7 minutes, 23 seconds. But we all knew this was going to take longer, for sure, because of the extra prep involved and the fact that I had to fill this bowl 2.5 times. On the other side, I could see if you're just making a glass of juice, there could be an advantage to that, to having that produce already prepped, sitting in the bowl. No, it couldn't be sitting in the bowl. There's a hole at the bottom, but at least prepped in a baggie or sealed or something. And then in the morning, you just throw it all in there. I don't know. It's probably not anything I would do. How does it look in here? There's a little stuck on the side here, not much. You got that food processor blade in there. And that looks pretty clean, similar to the Sauna 828. So what I want to do next is clean these guys up. First I need to juice those berries because I need to add that to it. So I will do that, then I will clean these guys up, come back to you with the times it took to clean each of these. I just got back from cleaning these guys up. I want to give you my feelings. Overall, like I said, this isn't an in-depth test, but I did time it roughly just to give an idea. Really, I'm focusing on which were my favorites, which were the easiest to use with different kinds of produce. But when I add up total time, cleaning time and everything, the wide mouths are still the fastest. This is the Omega, they're in the same order as before, Omega, Kuvings, Sauna, and Hurom. And the wide mouth juicers generally took about 2 minutes faster to juice, but they took about a minute longer to clean. So overall, these guys ran around 7 minutes, start to finish, including prep. The Sauna about 8 minutes, and then the Hurom was about 10.5. Again, remember with the Hurom, it does come with an extra feeding tube, something similar like the Sauna. That would change the results, but I'm only looking at this new food processor type of attachment. Wanted to see how that goes. And also with this guy, you know, if you could run it with this off, obviously it wouldn't be safe. There's a blade in there, but it would be the winner for sure because it's got a huge opening there. You could just shove spinach and all that stuff in there. So ingredient by ingredient, what did I think? Well, carrots, this is the biggest carrot I could find in the packages that I had. And carrots were fine in the Omega MMV. Something like this is still pretty big. If I just dropped this in, it would probably jam, so I would cut it once or twice on the diagonal. Same with the Kuvings. With this opening, it's plenty wide for carrots. With the Sana, I wasn't sure, but it fits fine. This is big enough for a big carrot like this. And again, the Hurom had to be cut up into little pieces. So again, it's its own little thing. And with the Sana, I would have cut this up too in at least 3 diagonal slices as well to limit jamming. What's next? The berries. The berries really were fine on all of them. You know, you just pour them in. This opening here was a little trickier because it's kind of a smaller opening. It could only fit a couple of berries at a time. You noticed in the juicing, I ended up using the trapdoor. It went a little easier with the berries then. With the Sana, that was the one I forgot to show you. So let me just show you how I would feed it. This tray's perfect for berries. I'll just put a few in here. You see, they'll just roll right in, no problem. It's a pretty big opening there. So berries were fine. Really, I would say almost equal across the board for berries. They're small. Something like that's going to be easy to juice. Maybe a little trickier here with opening and locking that trapdoor, but no big deal. Now with the apples, I would say that is where the Kuvings shines, the EVO, and that's because this juicing head comes from a commercial juicer. They took this from the Kuvings Chef, which is a juicer designed to operate basically nonstop. It's got a 24-hour rated motor in juice bars. And if you notice in juice bars, you're going to see a lot of apples being juiced, a lot of oranges that are already peeled being juiced. So something like that you're just going to be constantly feeding, that's where that extra 4 millimeters comes in handy. Again, you have to use smaller apples because you can see this is basically a medium apple, Granny Smith. You noticed it worked when I juiced, but this one's a little bit too big. With the Sana, obviously you'll need to slice it up. I use those slicers that take the core out. And with the Hurom, even extra prep because you're going to need to slice it, and then you'll need to cut those slices into smaller pieces as well, 3 centimeter. Now really though, with the home unit, with the Omega MMV for example, you're not saving much time. I would cut this into 6 slices if I'm using a knife with the Sana. I'd cut it into 4 slices here. If I cut it in half, it's still going to be too big. That diameter is too big. Same here. But again, this you would use smaller apples. It would be a little more beneficial. With the kale, kind of equal, at least with these guys. It was a bit trickier here. Smaller leaf like this, yeah, you can get it in. Bigger leaves, they might kind of hang up. And if you try to use the trapdoor, it's not really designed for something like this. You'd have to fold it around, kind of wrap it into a little ball to get it in there. Whereas with this guy, it goes right in. With this guy, it either goes in there or through the side and push down. And again, with the Hurom, you're going to chop it up probably with scissors. So kale went pretty well, probably easiest on these two. And finally, the tricky one is spinach. I would say spinach, like I've told you, when I juice in here, and I've got to juice a lot of spinach, I always go here. That's because it's got a big opening. It's got that tray that's going to keep spinach from falling into your juice. You know, no problem. This guy was a bit trickier. This hole's too small for spinach, and then this just is kind of awkward. It gets stuck in there, gets hung up in the trapdoor, and again, a commercial unit's not going to be juicing a lot of spinach typically. You'd want to wrap it up into a tight little ball. This guy I was a little pleasantly surprised. Before with these, I'd used to wrap them together, kind of squeeze them and put them down here. But with this, I would just slide them in as one goes flying off there and push it down with the tamper. It was a 2-step process versus a 1 here, but it worked really well. So I liked that. And with the Hurom, there was no prep. The spinach is small enough, you just throw it in. So in a way, the Hurom's the winner because there was no prep at all with these, and feeding it in was just throwing it in. But overall, I would say this is still the easiest. This is the hardest. Sana, for what's sort of a standard mouth juicer, this side tray really comes in handy. And yeah, I guess that's all the ingredients, huh? So overall, which is easiest to use? Again, it depends what you're going to be juicing. If you're running a juice bar, or if you're doing a lot of apples and you've got smaller apples, like you have an apple tree, this will go pretty fast. If you're I don't know, doing a lot of greens, look at one of these guys. If you're doing a lot of carrots, they're all going to work well. I'd still say greens overall. I like the results out of the slower juicers a little better. Again, running at 40 RPM versus the kind of brute force 60 RPM with those massive augers. But again, keep in mind, these are all good choices. These are the top manufacturers of juicers, and these are all their top models. So you can't go wrong with any of these. I just wanted to kind of show you the differences there. And yeah, I guess that'll do it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave any comments below. And that wraps things up. I'm Dan with EUJUICERS.COM. See you next time.